Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Suleiman. Today we're looking at FCT area councils elections again, but this time our focus is on the issues. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has fixed this Saturday, February 12th, for the FCT area council elections. And we have only a day to go. Indeed, by Nigeria's electoral laws, after tomorrow, all elections and all campaigns and all preparations end. There are 6 area councils in Abuja, or in the FCT, that is the Abaji, the Abuja Municipal Council, AMAC, Boari, Gwagwalada, Kuje, and Kwadi. But altogether, there are 68 wards with 475 chairmen and councillorship candidates approved by INEC so far, representing all 18 political parties. In total, 68 positions, that is 62 councilorships and 6 chairmanship positions are being contested for in this election. INEC has said it will use the beamers, which it tested in the Anambra November 6 election again in this very election. So the election is very important to all the partisans, particularly the PDP and the ruling APC. Usually, the PDP and the APC slug it out all the time in the FCT elections because sometimes it tells you where the heartbeat of politics in the country lies. On this occasion, the ruling party has assigned 2 governors to head their campaign committee to win all 6 chairmanship elections, but that will be decided by the voters. The PDP too, not being left alone, has also mandated 2 former governors also to lead its own campaign, taking a cue from the APC. That means we're seeing an interesting JoJo between the 2 parties. But what is going to happen? What, in fact, are the real issues in this election? What does it even mean to govern at this level? Has local government governance broken down in Nigeria? We're going to go through all of these issues and more. And with me are 2 Nigerians who are more than well qualified to discuss this issue. I have with me Dr. Abubakar Umar Kari, who is an Associate Professor of Political Sociology and Dean Student Affairs, University of Abuja. Also with me is Dr. Muhammad Ahmed Susani of the Department of Mass Communication, Bayes University. Thank you and welcome to Daily Politics, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. But before we go on, we'll take just a minute's break, and then when we return, we'll drive right into it. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and we go straight into our discussion on FCT council elections. So I usually start my questioning from the right and then end on the left. So I'll be starting with you. I'm sure Professor Kari is familiar with that. He's been on the program a few times.
Right.
So maybe we start with the local government elections themselves. Their significance in Nigerian politics and democracy over years, you know. I don't know, but there was a time when, you know, becoming a chairman of a local government was a serious job. You know, the contest for it itself was seen as serious. It was something that even citizens were took quite seriously.
Absolutely.
But there doesn't seem to be that much enthusiasm in local council elections nowadays. There's been voter apathy across all elections throughout the country, but for local elections, this tends to be much higher.
Absolutely.
What's going on with that?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be on this show, as well as also for setting up the context for what to expect in this election. And I like the idea that all politics is local.
Yes.
And that suggests to me that this election is as important as any other election, whether it is for being a governor or for being a president or a senator. This is not any less important. And therefore, I think the kind of seriousness that we expect from our president or whoever is running for the presidency, we should also expect from anybody who is contesting for a local position. The fact that things have changed, I think, speaks to the quality of our politics and the political culture in this country.
Are you saying that things have indeed changed?
I think what I'm saying is that when you think about the quality of leadership, that in itself is an expression of the quality of the political culture in the country.
Interesting.
And when you pose the question of how did we get here, that there was a time in the history of this country where anybody who was hoping to be a local government chairman was someone that we look up to. And we considered that to be a very serious business, and that if you didn't have the caliber to put yourself out there to contest for that position, you wouldn't even try and do that. And I think the fact that today we don't have the same kind of accountability is not just a question of being a candidate in a local election. It's a larger issue that speaks to, like I said, to what we have come down to in terms of our leadership and the qualities we expect in leadership. But I think we need to reverse that. And the fact that this election is happening and that Abuja is the only municipal election that the INEC itself is expected to, or is accountable for conducting, speaks to the idea that this is an important election. And when individuals, in this case voters, go out to vote, I think the expectation should be as high as any other election. And that we cannot be able to cut any slack for somebody who is running for chairman or a councillor just because we think it is local, because that is where most people actually understand the role of government. And that if we can be able to provide good leadership at the local level and then hold those leaders accountable, then we can expect to do that at all levels of government. So my sense of it is that this will be a litmus test for the kind of leadership that we are going to have in Abuja, but also other parts of the country in the subsequent elections that we are going to be seeing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Dr. Kari, as a political sociologist, you've followed these ideas for some time. Do you think there's been a change in even the quality of the contest, not just the governance, the contest for the local government elections or positions in the country, just the contest itself?
Yeah, I think there has been, and the major reason is for me, there has been a progressive decline or erosion in the relevance of the local government system itself as a tier of government. So much so that apostles, if I'll call them that, of the so-called restructuring, some of them are insisting that the local government system should either be phased out or constitutionally should be completely tied to the apron string of the states. Yes, and over the years, even though Abuja is insulated from that problem, I must confess, the state governors in particular have taken over the local government system. They impose the leadership. They are the ones that decide how resources meant for the local governments are spent, and in most cases, they are the ones who spend them. And because no serious local government election takes place in states, so people are virtually giving up about the local government. Over the years, the relevance of the local government has drastically come down. People don't even see the relevance of the local government per se. But some of these things are not true of the FCT.
Okay.
To a very large extent.
So how is the FCT different?
Yes. The FCT is different probably because there is no governor in the FCT.
Okay.
And almighty leader who sends down diktats, decides what happens and what doesn't happen. An almighty leader again who appropriates all the powers, use the instrumentality of the party machinery to whip everybody into line. Luckily, FCT is largely administered from the center.
Okay.
It's the National Assembly that does the budget of the FCT, and to the best of my knowledge, all the revenues meant for the area council get down to them. There is no much interference on how they spend them. But even in the FCT, as we mentioned, there has been apathy.
Yes.
In terms of turnout to vote. And there has been apparent disenchantment by the electorate as to the leadership of the area councils. And this is because the area councils have not been doing well. They get all the money, but the issue of accountability, the issue of what they put up or what they failed to put up on ground, you can hardly go to any of the area councils and pinpoint tangible projects that are
going on.
Yes, executed by the local government.
Okay.
Different from the one of the MFCT and the federal government. So, and again, until recently, area council elections in the FCT were mainly open to the so-called indigenes. Yes, the FCT have indigenes. They insist that they must be in charge. And to a very large extent, apart from AMAC, where from time to time an outsider comes, most of the area councils are being administered by the indigenes. Unfortunately, however, the indigenes who are supposed to know the real problems of their people have really failed to uplift the ordinary people themselves. So much so that if you go to some of the inner recesses in Abuja, you'll be shocked that these places are part of the FCT. So the area councils have failed, just like the local government system all over the country has failed.
Thank you. So it's good how both of you are approaching it.
Right.
For example, this idea, if you look at cases of the insurgency in the northeast or the banditry in the northwest, people have said that, okay, it's because we have ungoverned spaces. Ungoverned. But all of these spaces that people call ungoverned spaces are under one local government or another. So it cannot be ungoverned, technically speaking, when you have, when the spaces are under a particular local government that people know.
Yes.
So what's going on? Is it that the capacity to govern that has been eroded, or is what's really happening?
I think
to the extent that people are talking about ungoverned spaces.
There are a number of issues to consider.
Yes.
When you think about governance, one of them is the idea that when you have a responsibility as chairman of a local government, all of the things that you're expected to deliver on are the things that you would be running on. If you're running for another election, then the people who have voted you to be chairman of the local government should be able to look at your record. In other words, you're running on your record. Now, the issue of security is front and center. And the fact that in the case of state and local governments, the governors are in control of the resources could be another reason why, for example, a local government chairman could say, well, I don't have the resources to be able to provide security. And in that case, of course, the responsibility is shifted to whoever is governing that state. But I think in the case of FCT, that is not the issue. That's not the case. The question is, in my view, of course, in general, we are dealing with insecurity in the country. And I think the safety of those who are going to go out to vote is number one on the agenda. But FCT itself does not fall under any space that could be considered ungovernable. And therefore, It is the federal government through INEC and other federal agencies that provide security. I think that would be able to take care of making sure that, number one, people who get out to vote are safe and they can be able to vote and come back home safely. And I think the other thing that we need to also focus on is, especially in the case of FCT, the issue is about when you get elected into office, what is your motivation? What is your motivation? If it is about politics as public service, then I think the idea of them being able to do what they're elected to do should be obvious to everybody. And because we're in an election season now, this is a good time for us to test that theory, that anybody who had a record of being a chairman of councillor or a chairman, then anybody who is going to go out there and vote should look at their record and make sure that if, for example, you promise to do something and you are not able to deliver in the previous election, you don't have a chance to do.
But that's where the FCT is even different from
absolutely
from the other states,
right?
Because a large number of those who live in the FCT live in the FCT, but they are not really are connected to the politics of the local politics of the FCT.
Absolutely.
There are people who come to work for the federal government or who come to work for companies like here and so on. So they are not deeply involved in the local politics. So they may not even be aware
of the issues,
who the candidates or
absolutely
even the issues. So how do we get around that?
And I think, number one, the idea that only indigenous people in Abuja should be able to run for elections and
for the local council elections.
For the local council elections, not for other, but for the local council elections. I think it's one of the genesis of why some people are disinterested in what the issues are. But I think in many parts of the world, what we have seen is that if you have lived in a particular country, not country, but part of the country, and then you are a resident of that city or a state, you are paying taxes, then you should care about the issues.
Absolutely.
That is number one. And then also be interested in who gets to run and represent you on the council, and also who gets to be the chairman. And I'm suggesting in this case that anybody who lives in Abuja should be considered indigenous of Abuja. Yes, some people got here, before everybody else, but I think so long as we live here and we pay taxes and we work in the city, then I think we should have an opportunity to also equally participate in how the government is run and how we are represented.
Thank you. But how would that play out, in Nigeria's indigenous settler kind of politics? If we say, okay, if once you are here, you are here. It doesn't matter who got here first. It doesn't matter who owned the land ancestrally. Once you are here and you're paying tax and you have jobs here, then you belong here. If we say this for Abuja, for the FCT only, what would be the implication for that to the rest of the country?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we have to acknowledge the fact that politics has its own dynamics. Had its own features and so on and so forth. We have talked about indigenes, a few ethnic groups that had been in existence before the federal capital was moved to Abuja. There has been a very strong attempt by them to articulate a uniform position. I said, look, Abuja is our own. We are the landlords. Yes, they agree that constitutionally speaking and realistically speaking, every resident is also an Abuja person. For instance, I've been staying in Abuja for the past 30 years.
30 years?
Yes, but
that's a long time.
So I should be qualified to do anything. But when it comes to politics, because as I mentioned, politics, particularly Nigerian politics, has its own unique features. Should I come out to contest for election, the chances are a typical baggy person or Gwandara or Koro or Ganagana will see me as an interloper or as an intruder. their
Even
grouse.
though you were here before he was born.
Yes.
In case of those who are not yet 30.
Yes,
Yeah.
and their simple reason is that the federal government is not theirs. The other state governments do not cater for them, and therefore they ought to be involved more. And that is why, and unfortunately, okay, that is on the one hand. Unfortunately, the rest of us who have come from elsewhere have not demonstrated enough enthusiasm.
Okay.
Yes, we have not shown enough willingness to participate or to insist on contesting.
Okay.
So, and nature abhors a vacuum, of course. If there are people who feel so sensitive, who feel so strongly about this, and the other people are not as serious as they are, so the chances are they will take all the position, and that is what is happening. Apart from AMAC, if you do an analysis of all the contestants, they are actually indigenous. Apart from AMAC, where perhaps the vice chairmanship candidates for most of the parties,
Yeah, it's an Igbo lady.
yes, or Igbo or Yoruba or Hausa or whatever. But in all the other area councils, it is either Bagi or Koro or Basa or Gana and the rest of them, because they are the ones who show enthusiasm. The others don't. And interestingly, if the others are serious enough, they could easily have taken over, because as far as I'm concerned, there are more non-indigenous in the FCT
In terms
than
of
the
numbers.
indigenous. Yes, but the indigenous have not shown enough enthusiasm, enough willingness, enough interest, particularly in the area council election. So that is to say is one of the dominant features of Abuja political culture.
Thank you. So this takes us to the contest itself.
Right.
For the FCT.
Yeah.
You have 475
Yeah,
candidates.
absolutely.
You know, contesting for all 68
Yeah,
positions.
yeah.
Some for about 313.
Right.
Vying for the councillorship position.
Right.
About 110. They are vying for 6 chairmanship
Yeah.
and vice chairmanship positions.
Absolutely.
How do you begin to even wrap one's head around this?
I think it's pretty hard.
Practically
It's really hard for anybody to think about
Okay.
the numbers, right? The number of those that are running versus the number of positions available, and also the political parties that have been registered to run for those positions. I think that we know there are some very serious candidates, but for me, really, the whole issue is not about how many people are running.
Okay.
It's the quality of the platform under which they are running. And I'm hoping that in this election, there would be a situation where people are actually voting for the candidates, not for the party. I know it's hard for some people to accept,
Okay.
because, again, partisanship is part of the political culture everywhere. But I think if you have these many number of candidates running, and they are able to go out there and campaign vigorously, and then you have electorates that are paying attention and they're interested in the issues, I think the best way to approach this is for people to pay attention to who is the best candidate, regardless of which political party they come from.
But even if you have a good candidate,
Yes.
if they are from a particular party,
Yeah.
for example, you have a good candidate from a party that is not known. You know what happens when it comes to actual voting. You know, because the INEC will the voter card.
Right.
I mean the what do we call it?
The ballot paper?
The ballot paper
Right,
will
right.
have representation of all the candidates, and their
absolutely.
parties. So,
Right.
and voters are usually told, okay, vote for this party.
Yeah.
So how does that play out?
Well, again, I mean, it's quite a difficult situation if that's the way people are trained to vote. But what I'm saying is that could change. The idea that people can pay attention to which candidate is saying what. Unless, of course, again, we go back to voter apathy in general. But if you're looking at a variety of candidates and everybody is putting an idea out there, and you are really trying to compare and contrast, it's not very difficult to know which candidate has a better chance of doing what is right by the people. And I think, to me, that is what would make it unique.
Okay.
If people are willing to pay attention, whether they're indigenous or coming from elsewhere, I think we can change the political culture by making sure that the right candidate wins. But we know that there is influence of money, and there are two big political parties, so that would be a big challenge.
Exactly. That's why I was just going to pose to you as a political scientist. Now, you have a situation where you have 418 political parties, not just for because in a way this election is a test run, of the coming elections in this election year that we're in now. So you have 18 officially registered political parties now, and 475 candidates for just 68
slots.
offices, for 68 slots.
Yeah.
So how do you manage this from the point of view of even an electoral body, the INEC itself? But more significantly, you always have maybe just two parties standing out than the rest.
Right.
In the end, the contest will just be between PDP and APC, particularly for the more well-known councils, the AMAC, Gwagwalada, and so on and so forth. It's just going to be PDP.
Well, let me say that it's very good for the political system that we have so many candidates. Yes, because one of the cardinal principles of politics is participation. Okay. Where there is no participation, the political base is weak. And the fact that all the existing 18 parties are putting up candidates is good for the polity. Yes, there are two major parties. Some of these 18 parties, this is the only opportunity they have to get something. They may not be able to win a chairmanship election because it entails a lot, but they should be able to get some councillorship election. And this is a true reflection of the multi-party democracy that we practice. Okay. And in terms of how the number will be handled, I think it is no big deal. There was a time that we had 70 plus political parties. The ballot paper was so...
But INEC has complained that that's what increases the cost of the election for them.
It increased cost and it presented a problem. But if it could be handled that time, about 76 or 78 political parties, I think in 2015, talk less of 18. 18 is manageable. I think INEC has the capacity, has the experience, and has the resources to handle it. And so far, so good. From their rhetorics, we should accept the fact that they appear to be quite ready for the election. So I don't think, from the point of view of election management, there will be much problem. But election management is one thing. Political management is another thing. And by political management, I think I'm referring to the electorate themselves, the political parties themselves, their candidates and their supporters, whether they will be as ready and as serious and as responsible as INEC. And then the other stakeholders, like the security personnel, election monitors, because election is a whole range of activities, full of actors, groups, organizations, institutions, and so on and so forth. And traditionally, area council elections have been relatively free and fair, much freer and fairer than elections elsewhere. Perhaps one, because it is the FCT, most media are here, election monitors find it very easy to go everywhere. So the conduct of the election itself can easily be monitored, can be reported, and even and again, traditionally, Abuja politicians have not shown this desperation
for violence.
Yes,
and other things.
There could be a pocket violence here and there, but not as bad as elsewhere. So, on the whole, in terms of attitude of political actors and actresses in the FCT, it has been quite smooth, or at least it has not been as bad as elsewhere. So that's why I don't have much problem about the conduct of the Saturday's election. And given the innovation, the use of the BMAS,
Yeah. So I think maybe, but we will be discussing this because, first of all, there are so many issues. First of all, the INEC conduct of the election itself, the electoral management, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
But also the issues in the election, because the FCT is one of the largest, if you call it states, in terms of revenue generation, is one of the largest in the country.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and it is this AMAC, and other local councils that generate some of this funding. So issues of security, issues of striking teachers, issues of hospitals, and of course, even refuse management within the Abuja metropolis.
Absolutely.
So there are several issues that we'll be looking at. But that will be when we return from a moment's break. If you're just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. We'll just take 1 minute and then we'll be back. When we return, we'll continue with the discussion on FCT area council elections coming this Saturday. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Daily Politics. If you are just joining us, you can also follow our discussion on all our social media platforms, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and of course on YouTube. We're discussing FCT elections coming this Saturday. And with me, two professors from Bayes University and University of Abuja.
Right.
Professor Hamisu,
yes,
as we were talking about earlier,
right,
the INEC, the election will appear interesting from the kind of the slate of candidates you have, 475.
Right.
But if you look at, there are about 1.3 million registered voters in the FCT.
Yeah.
But according to INEC records in the news reports, only about slightly over 100,000 have collected their voter cards. And, therefore, it is only from this number that are going to be voting in the election. And across the entire 6 councils.
Right.
So what that means is that even if we divide that number by the 6 councils, it means that you're going to have maybe 20,000 people or 30,000 people selecting the chairman and councillors of the respective councils. What does that say for governance? Does it mean there is no legitimacy, or?
I think it goes back to political participation, which he has alluded to, and of course voter apathy. And the idea that people were not willing to get out there and get registered, but also the idea that at the end of the day, is the few number of individuals that have registered that are going to decide this election. And it means that in terms of political participation, we are not seeing any increase in terms of people wanting to participate actively in politics, because we are looking at what is the dividend, right? The idea is that when you look at what is already been done or not been done, voters would be asking themselves, what is in it for me? If I get out there, get the voter's card, and also get out to elect a member of the council or a chairman, what are the returns, right, on investment? So at the end of the day, yes, it shows that there is not a lot of political participation, especially on the part of the electorate. But the focus should always be on, if you don't get out there to vote, at the end of the day, decisions are going to be made on your behalf.
What about INEC? What about NGOs? What about?
So voter education has been a critical component of democracy. And that I think at the end of the day, we should take an example of the lack of participation in this election and make sure that subsequent elections are not affected by that. And make sure that people are allowed, because I think at some point they kind of had to stop the voter registration. And I think that is something that might have affected the numbers. So it comes down to one thing, voter turnout. Even though the numbers are not as large as we expected, but I think voter turnout should be a critical component of how we get the elections in terms of its legitimacy. And possibly we can be able to say, well, X number of people had come out to vote, and therefore we have the numbers to show that the elections are credible and legitimate. And I think INEC is aware of that. And again, it comes out to voter turnout.
Interesting. So what the issues now in the elections themselves? Because after elections then come governance. Now, one of the issues, as someone who has lived here 30 years, as you said, is this tenement rate that they impose on houses. They have imposed on mine as well. And I'm sure probably...
If they have harassed me.
Okay, on several people. So what do they do with the revenues that the FCT collects?
Yeah, that's
and how
a very good
is
question.
this election?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, but let me make a little clarification about the total number of registered voters.
Okay, good. Thank you.
The clarification, I think the 100,000 are people who have recently registered.
Okay.
The updates. The voters register has been there since 2015, but it's been updated. So relatively fewer people in the FCT, or more people, fewer.
So
people
this represents new people
yes,
that are coming to vote. Okay.
The total electorate are quite huge, but I still strongly believe that we will still have voter apathy.
Okay.
And I am basing my argument on experience, on tradition. First and foremost, even at the best of time, off-season election always are characterized by low voter turnout.
Yes.
And certainly this is an off-season election. It's not a general election too. And I've also mentioned earlier on that area council elections, usually the indigenes have the field day, others really don't care. And I don't think it is going to change.
Okay.
So don't be surprised if in certain area council, indeed, the total turnout is no more than 50,000.
Interesting.
And
mostly indigenes.
Yes,
still.
yes. And this is one of the problems perhaps with partisan politics, the issue of legitimacy. Because of these things, some political theories say democracy is not the best system of government because it's actually government of the minority. You can imagine millions of Abuja people. Yes. If we take Amak, for instance, Amak has more population than some states.
Yes.
But don't be surprised if the total turnout in Amak is not up to 100,000.
Yes.
Yes. And then when it comes to issues, certainly the issue of tournament rates is a very serious issue.
Yes.
Some of us that particularly stay within the city are being harassed by officials of Abuja Municipal Area Council,
Yes.
Who usually invade our privacy from time to time and come and claim that they must collect tenement rates. At a point in time, it became so controversial that somebody went to court, and there was a court order barring them, but I think the order was vacated sometime last year.
Okay.
Many residents of Abuja City are very angry about this tenement rate because it appears to be arbitrary.
So why has it not featured in the election, or why does it stand in this election? Elections are about issues.
It is one of the clearest indications that the others, apart from the indigenous, don't care. Otherwise, it should have spelled doom for the party governing the area council. So it is not an issue really, because the so-called indigenous are not affected by that tenement rate. Nobody goes to their villages, Kabusa, Dawaki, Aleita.
Yes, to ask for tenement rate.
Yes. They rather concentrate in Gerki, Use, Utako, Jabi, Metama, and the rest of them. Yes. So that is why it's not an issue. I don't even think there is any serious issue in this election, apart from the APC, PDP. This is one of us. Okay, this is not our own. And it is even possible that the ugly trend of vote buying may rear its ugly head. Because where there is no issue, now something takes over.
Absolutely.
Yes, like political corruption.
Fill that vacuum
Yes.
for the issues.
Yes. I don't think Abuja people have really been talking about any issue in this election. It is so bad that, okay, perhaps the only issue is in almost all the area councils, as even protested by INEC, there has been the litigations, contestations over who's the candidate. Earlier today, the Supreme Court had to rule to even change the candidate of the APC dramatically, and it has always been like in Gwagwalada we still have this problem, in Abaji, in Buari, and so on. So unfortunately, this election, I cannot see any issue there.
So is it that the voters, particularly the non-indigenous living in the state, is
Right.
it that they are feeling themselves above the politics of the state, or what's
No, I
going on?
think it's a traditional inexplicable disenchantment.
Serious.
Because for them, what does the area council do to them? Virtually nothing. You see, they, even where the area council should come in, they are hoping that FCDA will do for them.
we do for them.
In fact, you can hardly differentiate between the responsibilities of the FCDA,
FCDA
and that
area
of AMAC.
council.
Okay, for instance, even I don't know what exactly AMAC has been doing, apart from the fact that AMAC
And yet you have been
on
here
some
30
market,
years.
yes, on some market, it appears it is FCDA that's in charge of water, in charge of sewage system, the environment, in charge of the motor parks, and the rest of them. So you even begin to wonder, what are the area councils doing? So probably that's why the people are not interested.
Interesting. That takes us to beyond AMAC.
Right.
Because AMAC tends to get the slack, a
Yeah.
lot of slack, because it is the area council within the Abuja metropolis,
Right.
where most of the infrastructure is already well serviced,
Yeah.
at least disproportionately serviced, in comparison to other parts of the country,
Right.
by the FCDA,
Right.
the Ministry of FCT,
Yeah.
which is headed by the president,
Right.
but represented by the minister of
minister.
the FCT.
Oh, yeah.
But you have Kwali, Kuje,
Yeah.
Buariko,
Yeah.
Gogolada, and
Yeah.
Abaji, or
Yeah.
the area councils that are outside
Yep.
of the city.
Yep.
And these ones, they suffer serious infrastructure deficits,
Absolutely.
often worse than what you find in
Many
other
states.
states, in
Right.
many states
Right.
across the country. And they too have Nigerians, both indigenous but also settlers that are living in them.
Right.
So why are these ones?
Yeah.
How are these issues channeled or to be channeled?
Yeah,
in this
and
election?
that's a very interesting question, because I think it's always about what are the issues, and do people care about the issues, and when you're running for office, what do you run on?
Exactly.
And I think that these other parts of the city, or of Abuja in general, there's a dire need for development, for improvement. And I think that at the end of the day, even if the issues are not on the table by choice, and when I said by choice, by politicians,
politicians
themselves,
to bring
because
them,
they,
yes.
if it is not about the issues, then the electorate, right, people who are going to go out and vote have an obligation to put those issues on the agenda, on the table, and make sure that anybody who comes out to campaign is confronted by these issues. So the idea is that democracy is about the people. It's not necessarily about the candidates. Of course, they are the ones who put themselves out there, and they are the ones who are interested in leading. But at the end of the day, these different areas where there is not a lot to show for what the local councils are doing in terms of collecting taxes, I think that is where the issues should become front and center in this election. And I think if the politicians, the ones who are running for office, are not going to do it, guess what? The electorate, the people who are going to go out and vote, must be able to do that. And like I said, even though there are just so many candidates, in my view, but at the same time, we have to be able to identify who are really running for office based on the issues,
So how
not
can
based
we
on
do this,
sentiments.
given the level of disenchantment?
And the media
that
has a role to play in that. And that's exactly what we're doing
What we're
today.
trying to do
Putting the issues
Okay.
front and center. Go ahead.
Of the election.
Yeah.
It's all right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think it is political education, really.
Okay.
We have been saying it over again. it's not even just in the FCT. Unfortunately, there has been a downward trend in terms of voter turnout.
In the country as
Yes, in the country as a whole, but even more so, as I mentioned earlier on, during off-season election.
Okay.
Performance of those in government has contributed a lot, or non-performance, because people easily get disenchanted when they vote people into power, like APC came on the high crest of expecting. Yes, people thought they could come and solve all the problems. They have not solved any. Sorry to say, they have created even more ones. So it is, and people look at these things in political decision. And again, nature of campaigns, even the nature of the parties, there doesn't seem to be any serious difference in terms of content, in terms of quality, even in terms of individuals between the major parties. They are all the same. They speak the same way. They behave the same way. They promise the same thing. So really there is no choice. And so the absence of choice now makes more people to really abandon it. I say, look, I shouldn't waste my time again. And then even if they get there, they seem to work only for themselves and not the people. And so people get more discouraged. Absolutely. Therefore, the solution lies, one, in good governance. Okay. The solution also lies in political education. And the parties don't educate. In fact, interestingly, they usually abandon this issue of political education to INEC. Even when they are the beneficiaries of
voter
election.
Yes.
So the onus, as they say, is on them to woo people to go out there and reach out to the electorate to vote for them, to sell the party and sell the candidate. And they don't do that.
But Dr. Hassan, is there a kind of sanctions regime that can be brought into this equation, either for political parties or I don't know. Because if voters are not interested in issues, then how can elections lead to change?
Yeah, political awareness definitely is going to help in terms of our ability to participate in politics. And the idea that if you have an informed citizenry, then the quality of leadership definitely will go up.
Yes.
And also the political culture itself is going to get better at some point.
Yes.
In terms of sanctions, I think it's a question of making sure that those that are informed are also proactive, both in terms of becoming candidates, right, as well as becoming proactive in the voting process.
Interesting.
Now, for example, in this instance, we have a situation where there's a clear dichotomy between who is indigenous and who is not.
Yes.
And clearly there is apathy on the part of those that are newcomers, let me put it that way.
Even when they are not new.
Yes.
We have to bridge that gap and make sure that when we think about voter education and political awareness, it's not just left for INEC or even the political parties. Because the political parties, in my view, and this is usually controversial, have become a revolving door. Absolutely. Right? I mean, and you have
the
mentioned,
same set of personnel from
they
one
just
party
move around. I mean, it's a question of where did that get me in terms of position. So the question is, we have civil society groups, and I think that Abuja really has every opportunity to be able to create a condition where voter education, political awareness, political education, it's not necessarily left for government or for INEC, but rather, there are people out there who are creating this kind of awareness so that by the time we have an election, you get people to get their voter registration card. You also get people to go out and vote, but you also make the election about the issues.
Yes.
So elections that are not issue-based don't make any sense for somebody to go out there and spend an entire day trying to vote for what, right? And the idea that we question our politicians to make it about issues it's not just going to happen overnight. We create the kind of citizenry that is interested, but also making sure that we're holding our politicians accountable. So that when you come back the next time, we're going to ask, what did you promise to do the last time? Did you do that or not?
We've just about come to the end of this program, but it's important to bring one, to at least raise this as issue within Abuja situation, that of security.
Yes.
There's been this, instances of insecurity in Abuja lately. Exactly. Abductions, kidnappings, ransoms, stealing people's stuff, while they are going their various destinations. So how is the election, or how do these issues fit into the...
Yeah, it is a very big problem. It's a challenge. I regret to say that an axis has really become almost as bad as the Kaduna Highway, particularly the axis between Gwagwalada, Kwali, and Abaji. And then some part of rural Kuje. There are cases of kidnapping every day. Most of them go unreported. Some of the villages have even started moving out. Those so-called bandits have been sighted all over the place, and they are having a field day. I think even INEC made an allusion to that it is one of the challenges that it is facing. There is a clear and present danger in deployment there, in deploying INEC materials.
Into those areas?
Yes, into those areas.
Abaji, Kuje.
Yes, some, particularly Kwali and Abaji. And then some parts of Kuje. In Gwagwalada area council, the Dobi axis is mountainous, and so on. So that leaves Bari and Amak largely unaffected, apart from the normal city crimes and delinquencies and so on and so forth. But as complained by INEC, there is a very serious problem of insecurity in some of the areas of the FCT. So perhaps they will need serious security deployment. The military must get involved. Otherwise, I will not be surprised if some election workers refuse to go to some of those places. Areas. Yes, because there are cases of kidnapping every day.
That's serious. But unfortunately, we've come to the very end of this program. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Dr. Hamisu. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Professor Bakar Kari. Thank you to viewer for staying with us tonight as we bring you this edition of Daily Politics. We hope that you join us once again tomorrow when we bring you another edition of Daily Politics. In fact, we would like you to join us tomorrow because we'll be having one of the titans of northern Nigerian politics tomorrow. See you. Keep a date with us. Good night.